People say the happiest day of a person's life is their wedding day. But for me, it was the most horrifying ordeal of my existence. I came from a household where the next meal was always left to God's mercy. As a child, when I saw wealthy people stepping out of massive luxury cars, I honestly thought they belonged to a completely different species. I still remember secretly opening my father's closet back then. There was nothing in there but one old, faded wool coat. I used to wash it, dry it carefully in the sun, wear it, and tie a cheap $3 blue tie around my neck. Looking at myself in the mirror, I used to promise myself, one day, Ethan, you will become a great man, and the woman you love, you will give her every happiness in this world. My name is Ethan Monroe, and if you think this is just another ordinary rich-poor love story, hold on a moment. My grandmother was the matriarch of Monroe Global, but she disowned my father from the family simply because he married my mother, a girl from a humble, ordinary background. We spent our entire lives in absolute poverty. And just 3 weeks before this wedding, when my grandmother passed away, my own elder brother forged fake documents to kick us out of our ancestral home, just so he could claim sole possession of her wealth. I was left with nothing but the clothes on my back and the tears of my parents. I genuinely thought Chloe, my supposedly loving fiancée, and her family would be my anchor. God, I was such a fool. My father had given up his entire 10-year savings just to book this wedding venue, just so his son wouldn't be looked down upon the way he had been his whole life. Look at him. He had stayed up all night to iron that old suit himself. His hands were trembling from sheer exhaustion and anxiety. And look at my mother. She was holding that cheap leather purse she bought years ago for my college graduation. In this ocean of opulence, the two of them stood completely isolated and terrified. They were so afraid they might break an expensive glass, or that someone might look at them and laugh. But behind that fear, their eyes held a strange sense of peace. They truly believed their son had finally made it. Then, Richard, Chloe's father, walked up to us. His face didn't have anger. It just had this pure, toxic arrogance. He looked my parents up and down like a health inspector looking at rotten food. He turned to me and said in that cold, penetrating voice of his, "Ethan, come with me. We gave you our daughter's hand because we thought you had potential, but we didn't assume your family would be this uncultured. Look at them. They wore a suit from the previous century, and that purse looks like it was picked up from a garbage dump. My business community is here, Ethan. I cannot showcase these beggars as my in-laws. This is my daughter's wedding, not a charity drive." Before I could even process his words, he turned to his security guards and said, "Quietly escort these two out of here. And yes, hand them some cab fare so they can get home comfortably." A silence fell over the room, so heavy it completely numbed my body. The entire wealthy elite watched the humiliation of my parents as if they had been treated to free entertainment. I looked at Chloe, my beautiful fiancée. I begged her with my eyes to speak up, to stop her father. But do you know what she did? She simply averted her gaze and took a slow sip of her champagne. There wasn't a single trace of regret on her face. She, too, was ashamed of my parents. I took a slow, deep, heavy breath, stepped down from the stage, and ripped the floral brooch from my jacket. I threw it directly at Richard's polished shoes, stepped on it heavily, looked him dead in the eye, and told him, in a furious but completely controlled voice, "Marrying your daughter is a distant matter, Richard. I wouldn't even choose to breathe in a room where my parents are treated as second-class citizens. Keep your wealth, and bury your fake dignity with it." I took my mother and father by their hands, turned my back to the stage, and began walking down that long red carpet toward the exit. Richard was screaming like a madman behind my back. "Then leave. Go. Step out of that door and rot on the streets. You are not worth a single piece of straw without us, Ethan." We walked down that long corridor, and the whispers of the wealthy elite behind us sounded like the hissing of vipers. I held my mother's trembling hand tightly and promised myself right then and there that whoever made my mother feel small, I would set their entire world on fire. We pushed open the large glass doors of the hall and stepped out into the cold night. But we hadn't even reached the main gate because at that exact moment the wind shifted. A fleet of 5 massive, gleaming black, armored SUVs and luxury sedans roared into the driveway. They moved in perfect, military-like synchronization, blocking the entire front porch of the venue like a presidential VIP motorcade. Black-suited tactical guards stepped out smoothly, instantly creating a weaponized perimeter. Richard, who had followed us outside just to witness our ruin, lost his smug smile in an instant. His face turned completely pale. He recognized the license plates on those vehicles. In fact, every major investor in the business world recognized those plates. Out stepped a distinguished senior gentleman in a flawless, bespoke charcoal coat, holding a heavy leather briefcase. It was Arthur Vance, the most ruthless and feared corporate attorney in the country. He was my grandmother's personal lawyer. You see, my grandmother wasn't senile, nor was she blind. She knew exactly what kind of vulture surrounded us, especially my own brother. Before passing, she had set a trap that no one could break. And Arthur Vance was the executor of that trap. Vance walked right past the armed guards, completely ignoring Richard and the elite guests who had gathered. Outside to gawk, he stopped right in front of me, lowering his head in deep respect, and asked, "Mr. Ethan Monroe?" I replied, "Yes, Mr. Vance." He looked at me and said, "Your grandmother, Madame Eleanor Monroe, left me with clear and legally binding instructions. She wrote that if on this day, anyone in this entire universe should treat you with disrespect, ingratitude, or humiliate your parents, I was to intervene immediately and hand over your true birthright." I took the envelope in my hand. The heavy paper bore my grandmother's own handwriting. Inside, there was a short note that read, "My dear Ethan, a lion does not dwell in a pack of jackals. Those who cannot respect the pure souls who raise you do not deserve a single breath of your future. Your trial is over. Your empire awaits you." Arthur Vance then turned around smoothly, facing Richard and a crowd of stunned guests. He cleared his throat, and his heavy voice echoed across the open courtyard as he announced, "As of 6 p.m. this evening, in accordance with the final will and testament of Madame Eleanor Monroe, all controlling shares of Monroe Global Estates, the international shipping ports, and the philanthropic foundation have been fully transferred to the name of Mr. Ethan Monroe. He is now the sole proprietor of the Monroe Empire." The saliva completely dried up in Richard's throat. He began to gasp for air, his eyes literally bulging out of his head. He started stammering violently, saying, "Monroe Estates? That's impossible. That is the multi-billion-dollar conglomerate our firm has been begging to get a meeting with for the past 5 years. Ethan, you are the sole heir to that empire." I slowly stepped forward, standing inches away from him, looking down at his pathetic, trembling frame with a razor-sharp, chilling smile. I looked him in the eye and said, "Yes, Richard, I am. And you just used your 2-bit security guards to throw the one person out onto the street who single-handedly owns your entire company's debt.